Konnichiwa, it's your boy OfficiallyDevin back with another campaign commentary. This right here is part 0 of the Ikko Ikki campaign in the Master of Strategy mod for Total War Shogun 2. It's part 0 because when I started playing this campaign, I lost it early on. However, not only do I not have time to film more footage before making this video, but what happens in this attempt at the campaign informs quite strongly what happens in the real part 1, which will be coming next time. So this part's sort of optional. We'll be looking at the setup for the campaign and what things I tried the first time around and why they didn't work, and that gives a lot of context for what we're going to be doing when the campaign starts for real next time. So I'm just looking around here at the starting situation. We have 4 regions, but they're in 3 different groups, and that gives us a big strategic challenge because we're surrounded by more enemy factions than most other factions will be. I say enemy. We have a debuff to our diplomatic relations with all other factions because the Ikko Ikki are sort of like an anti-samurai rebellion. We do have samurai on our side and we still have roughly the same structure, so I don't know the details. But basically we're some kind of populist movement that all of the other factions will automatically hate. We're also slightly religiously different from all of the other factions, so we get debuffs not only to our diplomacy, but to our public order in any place we occupy as a result, making this campaign unusually hard compared to the other factions. We're also using the Master of Strategy mod, which does all sorts of things to the game. I'll try and point them out as we go along and encounter the various challenges and differences the mod brings about. As you can see, here is my opening military strategy. We're actually quite limited for offensive options because all of our starting units are in one of our 3 blocks of territory, so we sort of have to do something with the westernmost block at Osaka. And after looking around, the easiest opponent that was next to us was the Besho, so I go right for them. Actually no, I go for them in the second turn. And as it happens, there's not that much in their castle, so we can just take it right now, and that ends up being a pretty good start. Minimal losses with the auto-resolve, and of course we'll be replenishing, although replenishment is particularly slow in this mod, so actually losses taken in incidental battles will matter, which will be an interesting twist on the usual Total War campaign commentaries that I make. As you can see, we spot a small half-stack of Besho troops nearby. And as we'll soon see, every faction actually starts with the same stack, so the army we've got there is the same army that I have, although I think I recruited a couple of levied spears as well. You can see we have a tier of units available to recruit that's below the usual Ashigaru troops you get in the game, so we've got some less than trash to recruit, but that's all we can recruit right now, although there are also quite strong unit caps in the game, so we can't even recruit very many. As the Ikko Ikki, our faction speciality is low quality trash Ashigaru and warrior monk units, so we'll want to try and get, I think it's the level 2 temple building that starts allowing you to recruit warrior monks. I'll talk very briefly about the building system in this mod. As I said, it's very different, this mod, how it approaches things to the base game. You can see these tooltips have new things on them talking about unrest and overcrowding. There's kind of a new religion, quote-unquote, in the game called unrest, which, well, it works in a very confusing way. I can't say I understand it, but basically, if a place has more than 0 unrest when you add up the unrest stats of all its buildings, unrest will continually increase and replace your religion with unrest, giving you a massive public order penalty. So, this is a bit like how public order works in the later Total War games, where once it's a bit unstable, it just gets worse and worse over time, and you have to try and do something before then. What you can do, well, right now is nothing, because we don't have any buildings to reduce unrest. I think you reduce unrest by increasing the size of your towns, but at the start of the game we don't have the tech to do that. So right now unrest is just going to be growing around the place, and there's not much we can do about that. Very nicely, the Besho forces come over to attack the castle we just took. This is one of the things I quite like about Shogun 2's AI. It's super aggressive and it's willing to do things that give you the possibility of gaining an advantage over the enemy by using siege defenses. Although in this case we're not using the siege defense to its fullest potential really. By the way, one of the reasons that I actually gave up on this campaign once it goes badly, as we'll see in a second, is I didn't have the unit scale on maximum accidentally, so when we start again we'll have more troops on the field. Right now we're defending in a very poor fashion, with most of my troops inside the castle. I've forgotten to even bother deploying these gun troops. Clearly this is a very rusty opening, You are supposed to have your melee units outside the castle so that your ranged units can have things to shoot at. Instead, the ranged units will just be holding the wall against the enemy's melee units. Luckily, the enemy went mistake for mistake with me. They've taken their gun Ashigaru and have thrown them through the open gate to attack by spears. Thank you very much. And just in general, we can win without much strategy because we have an overall advantage in terms of power. And things like climbing up the wall and the effect of the odd shot from a tower will give us a tiny bit of an extra advantage as well. Soon we've killed most of their army, their generals come in, and here I finally put my gun troops to use. So I was going to try and shoot into the flanks of these generals as they ran across in front of this unit. But, well, it's hard to get your men to fire or be reloaded ready to shoot at the start of a fight or anything like that, so it doesn't quite work out like that. I do remember that using gun troops is kind of tricky, especially because if you turn fire by rank on, they tend to glitch out quite a lot unless they haven't done anything in the battle. So we win that fight. We are skipping over the fights here because of course they don't really matter here in part 0. We'll go over more details in the equivalent fights in part 1. As you can see, after that win I immediately moved on to attack the other Besho castle nearby, and in the next turn I brought up some Ashigaru to help out, or some Yari militia actually, technically not Ashigaru. I have the option to vassalize here and I'm going to take it because in this game vassalization is more important than it is in other games. It increases your honor, giving you a global public order buff and a diplomatic relations buff as well, I think. Plus, as the Ikko Ikki, it means we don't have to manage their religion and deal with the bad public order locally. But in this mod, not having extra towns and extra buildings reduces your unit cap. So this is actually going to limit us quite a bit. We don't want to rely on vassals too much, as I came to appreciate after taking on this vassal. It's also an annoying position for a vassal because we're actually at war with the next castle over, which is much better. So that would be a better vassal to have on the outside of our territory, to be a buffer against other factions who'll probably want to attack us. Well, we'll think about that for part 1, I suppose. In this case, I moved up to the castle, but there's really no way of taking it. It's a decent castle with a load of troops inside. My army's already damaged and it's smaller. So I thought, well, we just can't do this, and ended up walking back after this, and generally doing nothing. We're kind of out of strategic options in this case. What I need is to be able to rally my greater faction size to get a load of troops together, but we've already hit the unit cap. You can only have a few of each unit, and because some of our units are defending our little pockets here and there, our front line army can't get stronger than the army of a one-region faction, and that's going to be trouble for us. This is also trouble for us, and I suppose this is the big trouble with the whole Ikko Ikki campaign. Everyone hates us. I'm playing on hard as well, which makes the AI hate you slightly disproportionately more than they need to. And we get declared war upon by the Jimbo. They are the faction at the top right of our territory. They're just to the east of our uppermost block, where we're only defending with a couple of units at each castle. Or altogether at the easternmost castle now, since that's where they need to be. I was going to try and recruit some warrior monks. I've got the building for it now, but it turns out you also need certain trade resources to recruit them for whatever reason, and we're not going to get access to those anytime soon. You get them from having regions that produce them, certain special regions, or from trading with factions that produce them, or by capturing trade nodes, of which there are very many on the map, so we can go for that. But in the meantime, we're going to have to make do with what we have, and the enemy appear to have some more. The Jimbo come at us with this army. As you can see, it's the standard starting army with the same set of units we just fought against the Besho. In this case, we're going to do a siege defense with the official method that is, well, not what you're supposed to do. The game doesn't tell you to do this, but this is the only viable way of defending a castle if you can't just expect to beat the enemy as they climb up the wall with melee units. Our strength is in our ranged units, so we need men outside the castle to block the enemy so that more of our ammunition gets used in the battle and we get more kills on these archers. By the way, I forgot to install the thing that stops the blood splatter appearing on the screen when the camera is close to the action. I think I also forgot to do it when I started doing the part 1 footage for this campaign as well, but at some point I might remember to get rid of it. So in come the enemy to clash with our trash, and now we hope they'll just stand there for a bit. The trash will survive for a while, giving us the chance to kill the superior enemies using our archers. This game has much better, in my opinion, ranged mechanic than the later Total Wars. Basically, units have armor and they just straight up have an armor save against ranged attacks. So if our arrows are hitting them, there is every chance we'll be doing some damage, but heavier armoured units will sometimes just have the arrows go through them actually, if you look very closely. That's how the armour save system works. There's no health system or missile block chance or anything like that. It's quite simple and nice. As you can see, this tactic of holding position buys a little bit of extra time, meaning we get a few more kills than we would do, but because we're only using the trashiest bowmen, we're not getting mass kills or anything like that. With things like professional gun units, this is much more effective. At least afterwards, the enemy have to make long climbs into the castle, and the climbs do take out troops as well because they fall off the wall. All the enemy range units are wasting their time trying to shoot my archers who are garrisoned into the wall and thus get some cover. You do take losses that way, just not very many. We grab some kills as the enemy climb up, and then all the archers need to basically run off the wall. I think you actually do get a melee buff if you fight while garrisoned into the wall. The game never says that you do, but I have a vague memory from years ago of discovering that it's a hidden mechanic. Anyway, in this case we just run away from the wall and try to get our couple of remaining melee units to hold the enemy in position so the archers can shoot them. We can dismount officers to get extra melee units if we need to, as I do right there, and broadly speaking, that does the business and we clear out the enemy's attacking wave. At this stage in the battle, the AI is going to do the Shogun 2 classic. It was nostalgic for me to see them doing this, and in the last battle as well. Towards the end of any siege battle, if they start losing, the AI will just dismount all of its cavalry and try to send them in on foot. Always handy because it means you can take out leaders in siege defenses very easily because they'll just sacrifice themselves right at the end when it's easiest for you to kill them. Very kind of the AI to do that for us. In this case, I guess technically the AI are winning this battle if you look at the balance bar, but that's mainly because they have a bunch of samurai outside that can't really participate in the fight, like these dismounted cav and their generals who are now dead, and they also have some gun samurai out there who just aren't doing anything. And here, our mounted cav inside can instantly charge the dismounted cav and take them out, no problem whatsoever. As for the guns, well, they were just trying to shoot at my units, but at point blank range and at such an angle that I think they were always missing. They got the odd kill maybe, but in the end they run out of ammo, that demoralizes them and they run away, so we defeat them without any further losses. That goes well, and there we have it. We actually held off the Jimbo invasion and we didn't lose any of our regular units. We lost garrison units, but they instantly respawn at full strength after siege battles, so they don't really count for losses, even less so than they do in the later Total Wars. But of course, I told you earlier that this is footage of me losing a campaign, so as you can see, our win doesn't actually get us anywhere because a bigger army just shows up immediately afterwards and comes at us with a whole load more stuff. So again, with our territory separated out like this, it just takes one neighbour to overcome a small portion of our force, and it's over for us. And of course, it's over for us right here. I just take the auto-resolve on this. We're going to sacrifice these troops. That means we're going to lose both of our officers and the castle and the army, and the other castle is going to go down as soon as the enemy get there, basically. So that's half our territory off the table right there. And it does get worse, because the Asakura also declare war on us. That's the faction to the south of our northern block of territory, so if the Jimbo hadn't showed up, we would have been screwed. Because of this, instead, decided to call my allies in to see if they would actually help, and the Ashikaga Shogunate decides to help. But my two other allies don't, including one ally who are also of the Ikko Ikki religion that we've got to the south, the Saika. And yes, the Jimbo take my other territory. Nicely, I actually buy my enemy to the west as a vassal. Normally you can't buy vassals like you can in later Total War games, but in this case we can do it because they're about to die. It doesn't mean they still won't die while they're my vassal. In some ways it's annoying because it would be better to kill them myself than have them as my vassal. But we've done it. This leaves us with no real project for the main force. Still just controlling public order with quite a lot of our troops around here actually. I was looking around in the diplomacy menu trying to work out what can we do as an offensive option from the situation. The issue we have is that in this mod a lot of the other factions start with allies, and it's much more difficult than in later Total Wars to get around alliances. You can't do the whole join war exploit so much to not end up fighting your new enemy's allies. That means we lack options. There's no like one region we can just declare war on and take and then do that over and over again to build up strength. All the wars we can take on are going to be extremely difficult for us. What I ended up doing is buying military access from the Shogunate and the Azai to start moving towards the Asakura instead, just on the off chance that this will allow us to do something useful. Looks like one of our generals died of old age there down at Negashino, which is our best castle, and it might be our capital as well, not quite sure. I was trying to get military access from the Wakasa Tagida, who are the last faction I need to get through to get to the Asakura, but they just refused and I couldn't buy it off them, so I had to declare war on them instead to be allowed to move through their territory. There's no trespassing in this game. Here's me trying to get to grips with this unrest system. We've got major unrest problems here at Osaka, and as I said, it works like an instability problem, so once you have an unrest problem, it just gets bigger until you do something about it. So we're going to lose our religion, we're going to lose our public order as a result, and I'm not quite sure why in this situation. It's a bit difficult because you can see on the tooltips, we have buildings that both increase and decrease unrest. Upgrading the town, I think, gives you a net decrease, but the building we have currently in the slot and inn, while it increases happiness, it also increases unrest. It also said it decreases unrest as well, but maybe the net amount was an increase. Super confusing, both in terms of how the system is supposed to work and its layout. I'm guessing because it's using game mechanics that weren't at all intended for this, so it's kind of full of workarounds that you need to get used to. In the next part, by the way, I'm going to be using a mod that actually makes unrest easier to deal with. I think it gives you plus or -2 unrest at all times, so you have to have your place be more unstable for the unrest religion to start growing. Anyway, as for military matters, you can see the Asakura have 2 stacks hanging out right next to where I was trying to get into their territory. I just sort of hid next to them, and by the next turn they've now got 2.5 stacks. They're just expanding down here. I think they're actually stuck. They're trying to pathfind past that castle right there, but they can't because there's no space. So that's handy for us. Master of Strategy does have a different map to the base game, as you might have noted if you're used to the base game, and that map has many more castles on it, probably causing some pathfinding issues. As you can see, I immediately took one of the Asakura castles because it's just undefended. What I could potentially do here is pull an incredibly cheeky move, and I'm so annoyed I didn't think of this at the time. I might have been able to run up and auto-resolve the other 2 castles this turn as well. If I did that, the Asakura would technically be defeated because units outside of your territory get deleted when your last territory goes away. You don't get the chance to sort of come back as a rebel faction and go for the territory again. So yes, we could have taken out everything in one fell swoop, if that was possible. I'm not sure if I had the movement to actually do it, but I'm just annoyed I didn't try and do it. Instead, I set up an ambush outside the town, and then sat there trying to work out what's going on here with public order and unrest, and see what buildings do what. At least my ambush outside the town strategy quote-unquote works. It doesn't really work. This allows us to not fight the enemy all at once if they came in to do a siege attack instead. But we still have to fight them, so it's like even if we win this ambush, the other army can still come over and you can only ambush them once. Meaning this is not really an ideal situation to be in. The ambush map wasn't very good either. We were deployed too far away from the enemy, the gap was too big. So we can't catch them in the ambush, they can immediately run out of the kill zone and just form up normally. Also, there are no controls in Shogun 2 for easily moving massed formations of units, which is something I really like about the later Total War games, which would have come in really useful in this fight. But anyway, we started walking towards the enemy. Kindly, one of their units turned around to face us so we can use our guns against them. By the way, if anyone was wondering why I have guns at the start of the campaign, it's because in the Master of Strategy mod, the start date is later, so it's after the Japanese have reverse engineered guns and just made them part of the normal fare of weaponry. So yes, we have gun Ashigaru and gun Samurai even in our starting army, as does everyone else, as noted. We killed that archer unit that came for us, then we kill another archer unit that was near my cavalry group hiding on the other side of the ambush zone. After that, there is a fairly intense tit-for-tat battle, which normally I probably would cover blow by blow and use the replay to have nice footage of it. But because this is ultimately irrelevant in this Part 0 world, I'm not going to bother. As you can see, we lost our faction leader out here. He was trying to run away from a unit, but he got caught in melee it seems and I didn't notice. So he died. That's a shame. We actually didn't lose any other units, we just took massive casualties overall, so in theory we can get everyone back, except for our faction leader. The Asakura then just do the thing that I alluded to earlier. The rest of their troops come over. They actually don't attack me, but we're in a situation that we can't really get out of now. Looks like losing my faction leader caused our dynasty to change. We only had that one guy in our clan, I guess because our faction leader's a monk, he had no family or something. But you don't lose the campaign or something if this happens, we just get a new guy, so now we have another one person, and we can adopt our generals to give ourselves sons if we want. In this case, with the Asakura army bearing down on me, I thought, well, I'll just run away and take your other castles to be annoying. Unfortunately, this middle castle is defended with some units with my army half dead. I didn't want to try that, so I went around to the next castle, and that one was easy enough to take with a free auto-resolve, so that's something. Now we've annoyed the enemy a bit. However, this doesn't really affect their strategy. They can immediately just take us down. They take the first castle, and then they'll come over to attack the other castle in a second. And this is where part 0 of the campaign ends. We're not entirely out of luck, because after losing to the Asakura, we can make another army, but we won't be able to have any of the samurai units in it, because we don't have them unlocked. And if anyone else declares war on us, we'd be in trouble. Actually, no one has so far. If, say, the Odo were at war with us and invaded Nagashima, or the Miyoshi to our west, a massive faction who have like 7 regions just on our western border, now those would be some problems for us, but for now, technically, we could keep going, but I'm not going to. I didn't even do this battle we're looking at, because even if we win, the other stack will come over, and of course the Jimbo also have troops just off to the left of the screen. So what we'll do now is come back for part 1 of this campaign. We're going back in time, armed with the knowledge of how much we just got owned, and a few more tidbits about how the mod and game works, a few reminders there as well. So we can try and have a better attempt at this particularly hard campaign with a particularly hard starting position. So why don't you join me for some better and more involved commentary on that in the next / first part